D.C. Then he left in 1941 and went in the Army. And when he came out of the Army, he was a lieutenant colonel. Well, he came back to New Albany and married Sarah Griffin, P.C. Griffin's sister. Married Sarah Griffin, and they had 3 girls. And that's.
Can you tell me about what it was like going to school during the Depression?
Well, when we went to school during the Depression, I walked from this side of the airport to Cleveland Street in the 5th grade and the 6th grade. And the first semester of the 7th grade in the old New Albany school that was in a picture here not long ago. We walked. It wasn't any school buses. Whatever you had to do, you had to walk to get to it. Well, then.
And you traveled to football games and people's
traveling
cars.
to football games in people's cars, yeah, and it was way on down there.
How did y'all get uniforms?
Well, we got uniforms. Union Lumber Company furnished my uniform on about 36 and 35 and 36. Then other business in town bought the rest of the uniforms.
The businesses in town have always.
Business in town was always supportive, and all the churches always supported us. We never wanted to get there, and they all, as I said, always bought us a hamburger after it was all over with. Well, then.
Cheerleaders. Did y'all have cheerleaders?
We didn't have any cheerleaders as they do now, but we had 2 or 3 girls when they had the homecoming queen. When we had the homecoming queen, when that was our cheerleaders. They wasn't elected as they are now, and they wasn't dressed like they are now, but they were down in the front there. 37, 38 was the first cheerleaders I ever saw. Was when they had that first few or 4 in the front down there. Mary Little Fitzgerald was one of them. Shirley Holland was one of them. Let's see, who was the other? The Sparks girls were one of them. That was the 3 or 4 that I can remember. The first ones that was first cheerleader had. Well.
Did y'all have shoulder pads?
All right, then we had the shoulder pads. And we had a little old leather helmet we put on. It was just a little old leather helmet that was about an inch thick. It come down over your ears. We had the shoulder pads, and then we had the hip pads. Had the hip pads that was 2 little things right over the top of your hips. Just 2 little pads right over the top of your hips. Then you just girded that belt around you and pull those on you as tight as you could put them on there. And they were pretty good protection. But then. When they go back to when they're talking about that old wedge that they used to have back there, when about the time 30 Hightower and Tudor and them came in there, they outlawed that. All it was 4 or 5 players getting together, and they'd start running the end run on that thing, and the guard, the right hand guard would pull, the right hand tackle would pull. Join up with that right end on that thing, and then we had two wing backs. Those 5 would get together, and they'd just get together there, and they'd just plow out everything right in front of them.
With their arms locked?
Yeah, with their arms locked. There wasn't anything really against it, but anyway, they got around and finally tried to outlaw it and told them they couldn't lock arms and all that kind of stuff. But I was just coming into that thing when that outlawed it. I maybe was part of one of them. I think I was. But anyway, they outlawed that, and then from then on, they started coming in playing the old single wing. That's where they had a short back, two wing backs, and a tailback. And Red Ferguson was the first tailback on the first team that I played on. And I can't name the other, but came on down, John Grace and that bunch, when I got to know that bunch real well. We had the same thing, or same place, and almost identical the same players all 4 years. And the thing, then we had a quick kick, and we had a drop kick for a field goal. We had one boy, old Austin, that could drop kick a field extra point. Nearly every time he couldn't kick a field goal because it never did get that close. But anyway, he kicked those extra points just slick as a button. And then when then later on they picked up I think it was about 37 or 38. We picked up where we started. We got enough where we could go to school in the old school buses. They'd take us in those school buses and put the. You had to take your uniform wherever you went, and we'd take them out of there, and you had to wash your own jersey, and the coach would check your jersey Monday morning to see that you had your jersey clean on Monday morning and your socks clean on Monday morning.
Well, how did you wash it?
We carried them home and washed them.
Yeah.
We carried them home and washed them in a number 2 wash tub, an old bar soap. So until I got out of there, we washed them ourselves. We never did get to go to the laundry. There was one laundry in town, but we had to keep our own stuff clean. And those old shoes, we had to polish those shoes and have them clean. By the time we was through practice on Monday afternoon, we had to have those shoes and those game shirts clean.
Is it true during the Depression that they made cleats out of the nails from the boards around the field?
They made Mr. I just called his name, Mr. Carl Hall's uncle. Brooks Sledge he'd take leather and build it up, and then he'd take a thing and put the nail in, and he'd cut the cleat out. He put the cleats right where the cleats are now, on the back and the front, but it was a nail in there, and it put that nail on the inside of the shoe and bred it back. There wasn't no soles in them either. You just put that nail in that shoe and just bred it back.
So that's true.
That's true, yes ma'am. I wore 4 or 5 pair of them.
They were nails.
They were nailed in there with some kind of a real strong nail, but he put the cleats on those shoes for us from the time we was in the 6th grade until we graduated.
Wow.
There wasn't any bought shoes with cleats on them. Mr. Sperry Cole, Tom Hunt Cole's daddy, bought the first shoes that were bought that had cleats on them that you could screw on them. And that was about 38 or 39, somewhere along in there, because he graduated in 1937. He bought the first store-bought shoes that we had up till that time. And then I don't know who people put up all the rest of the thing, but our old helmet was just a little old tight thing. It came down over your ears and had a hole where your ear. Wasn't no face guard on it, wasn't anything on it. It was just that one helmet on you.
Did y'all have many broken bones?
We didn't have anybody. We had one boy that got a broke hip in about 1937. We had one boy that got a broken arm in 1938. In 1938, we was playing Kossuth, and a guy hit me from the back on the backside. I had 2 or 3 bruised him, but I played the last ball game with that tape all the way around me. We had plenty of tape back then. They kept everything taped up.
That's great. What about practice? Did y'all practice after school?
We practiced every afternoon after school for just about 2 hours. Well, a lot of these boys that was playing in didn't have a ride home. They had to walk home after practice.
Wow.
I was one of them. I had to walk to the airport on down to 1937. But Brother Kirkland had a big old room upstairs in that old parsonage. One big old room up there. And 4 or 5 of us would go there when we'd come home from ball games and spend the night and get up and go home the next morning. Or when we practiced that day and it rained, he'd take us all in up there. He had 4 or 5 beds up there. That was about the same time Hardeman Henry came into this country. Had 4 or 5 beds there and he'd let us sleep. Well, later on then, Mr. Daniel got Ivy Maxey and myself and another boy came. He got us a room in the big old house right across from where Dr. Hudson's house is there. That big old bay room. Put us 3 beds in there, and every time we came home, that's where we went and slept till the next morning. Joe Kelly Martin was the 3 of us. They'd go there and we'd go there and sleep, and we'd get up the next morning and go home. Well, then they got then where they somewhere about 1935 or 6, they brought the National Youth Administration, put out enough money to clean the schools up with. Well, John Grace and Wallace Ivy Maxey and Snipe, boy, can't call his name. They hired us three to clean up all those floors and wax them down in the high school on that thing. And then when we'd leave there with the baseball, football game, we'd go and work on those floors. And they paid us 10 cents an hour to put that oil on all those floors and wash all the windows. Well, as it went on down, picked up another football player too that got involved. And after I got on out, Eric Snipes and some of that bunch picked that bunch as football players. But anyway, they let them work as much as they could. But we, in 1930, 29 and 30 and 31 and 32 was the Depression. We didn't have anything. That school didn't have but very little bit. If we got books and an old thick tablet that we wrote on, was all we had. That's what we took a test on. And those old pencils was number 2, and you had to write about as big as a line. You had to, and I can remember Mr. Daniel coming into our class, and he'd get up on the board and he'd write ABCs across there in the cursive and the manuscript on that thing and show us how to do it. Well, us old country boys tried to do it, but we didn't do it.